Good evening and welcome to the GRN show. My name is Gatel Ruiz Nicholas, and I will be your host. During the last elections in 2020, some may say that the millennials, particularly those born between 1980 and 1990, were very engaged. And they've made many changes. Obviously, we have been fighting to save our democracy. Culturally, we are changing. So we have to credit the millennial for all the things they've been doing to create an inclusive and equitable society. So they play a critical role of bridging the gap between the baby boomers like myself and the younger generation. So they are actually leading our nation to a more diverse and accepting future. According to a metropolitan policy program hosted by author Frey Brookings, this generation is America's largest segment of our population. They make up 25% of our populace. So tonight with us, we have Nancy Fry, who is the president of the Broward Young Democrats, and she will share her views on the role that this particular age group play in politics and the influence they will play in the future. So Nancy, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Great, great. So, as I mentioned earlier, I see this emergence of young adults really engaged in doing things. I guess my first question to you will be, tell us about the Broward Young Democrats and why was it formed?
So the Broward Young Democrats is a caucus, which means we're a group within the Democratic Party that is issue-based. Sometimes we have groups that are location-based. We are issue-based, and we're chartered under the Florida Young Democrats. So our purpose is really to engage Democrats 40 and under, so Young Democrats actually has a wide range, to be more involved in the political process, to make sure that we have young Democrats in leadership positions. We have young Democrats running for office, working behind the scenes, helping those that are running for office, and just making sure that young Democrats are engaged politically.
Super. And you mentioned to really encourage young Democrats to run for office. And I have to say the last election, the August primary as well as the November primary, you really played a big role in identifying even those who are older who would be ideal candidates for our community. So it's not just young Democrats that you're encouraging, you guys also endorse. Tell us about that process. And again, I think it shows how you guys are closing the gap between the generations. So tell us a little bit about that.
We're very proud of our endorsement process. In this past general election, we actually had a 66% win rate with our candidates that we endorsed. And we select our candidates partially based on age, but partially based on the candidate's ability to focus on issues that are important to young Democrats. Because we are an issue-based caucus, we want to make sure that we have candidates that understand the issues that young folks under 40, millennials, Gen Z, the issues that we're facing, and are going to make sure that they legislate and govern in a way that is going to be beneficial to us.
Excellent. So tell me, how do you think we did? The last election, how do you think, whether the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, what are your feelings about the outcomes of the last elections?
So I'll look at it from a couple different perspectives. Nationally, I think we did better than expected, but I also don't like that our expectation was so low. Democrats do kind of deal with an issue of sort of relying too much on historic data to inform what we do, rather than going out and listening to voters and seeing what's going on in the community. We're not as nimble with changing demographics. We rely too much on past data to inform our decisions, instead of recognizing that we have an opportunity to change those patterns if we modify our approach, if we listen to what's going on in our communities and really focus on the voters instead of what the data is telling us. Republicans, for what it's worth, they're excellent at telling people what they want to hear, and they understand the psychology of voters, which goes hand in hand with how to suppress and disenfranchise voters. And Democrats need to make sure that we are increasing turnout. And that's something that we saw locally as being a big issue. Nationally, we did lose the House by a slimmer margin than we were hoping. I would have rather us seen the goal set of keeping the House, but I understand that we did better than what was expected, and we're still fighting for the Senate right now. And hopefully we have enough folks going out and really focusing on Georgia that we can re-elect Senator Warnock. Locally, though, I think it's okay to say that it was a disappointment. Looking at our low turnout numbers, that was a failure on the Democratic Party's part, because we know that when voters turn out, we win, because we actually support the values of what voters want. Like I said, Republicans say what voters want to hear. Republicans do what voters want to see done. And when we look back and we're going to look at historic data, the joke about Florida is we always have the close races, that we always have those slim margins, that Andrew Gillum lost by 30,000 votes, Bill Nelson lost by 12,000 votes, Nikki Fried won by less than 10,000 votes. But this cycle, we didn't even come close. We lost by over 1 million votes in the governor's race and in the Senate race. And so that shows a distinct failure on our part, just looking in a 4-year time span. We did not have demographics change enough. And we know that the turnout numbers were well below what they were in 2018. And that's something that we need to evaluate, and we need to figure out how to fix moving forward.
I agree with you. I totally agree. Even I did some volunteering at the polls this past November, and I have to tell you, it never really got busy. When you look at the presidential election cycle, usually you have lines waiting. So I think perhaps I believe perhaps there's an opportunity for us to really kind of re-engage the voters and let them understand, whether it's a midterm election or presidential election, they need to have their voices heard. But do you think there was a bit of disillusion, or maybe, just apathy among voters?
Sorry, absolutely. I think that's a huge issue, and that's always been an issue. And I think it was exacerbated this election cycle. The rhetoric I hear the most from folks that don't turn out to vote is that they don't understand why their vote matters. Nothing changes. They don't see a change in policy. They don't see things helping them. And sometimes there are policies that help them and they don't really know. And we don't necessarily do a good job of advertising those. But also, if people are still feeling like they're disadvantaged in some way, if they're not seeing their wallets or their homes improve, then you can't convince them by showing them a sheet of paper and saying, oh, these are the wins we had. They need to feel it. And we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to rally our base, just in the way that Republicans rally their base. They rally them with anger. They rally them by telling them that they are victims, that that the government isn't working for them. And we need to show them that we need to show voters that the government can work for them. That if you can elect the people to office that should be there, that we can make those policies that will affect their lives, that will help them out in their day-to-day. But we can't do that if we don't get those folks elected, and we can't do that if we don't talk to voters.
And it's interesting, even with our current president right now, there's been so many accomplishments. So many things have been accomplished. When you look at the infrastructure bill, all of the provision, and how this particular bill impacts the working class. When you look at, what he's doing with Medicare. I mean, those are policies that are affecting people like myself, people like our moms, people, and even with the talk about the student loans. These are things that are really impacting our day-to-day lives, but somehow the messaging is not getting to the people that it needs to get to, so that again they can gain their confidence back into our government. So there's quite a bit of work to do. So, but anyway, we're going to take a short break, and before we do so, I do want to remind you all that the GRN Show is on social media. Please like, share, and also we retain all of our videos on our YouTube channel under the GRN Show. So thank you for watching us, and please just keep liking and sharing, because this information may be helping someone. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. We are back, and we have with us Nancy Fry, who's the president of the Broward Young Democrats. And we're talking about the state of our nation and the impact that the millennials are making in our community. So Nancy, once again, thank you for being with us. And this, I guess the last 2 years in particular, we really have been fighting for our democracy. And how do you feel the millennial have impacted that whole movement?
As a millennial, I will say that just starting off by talking about politics in mixed company, talking about it with our friends, the rise of social media has been a huge help, because I know a lot of folks in my generation were raised that you don't talk about politics. That's something for other people. That's something we put aside, and it's not polite to talk about politics. And I think we're realizing as a generation the harm that that has caused by not talking about it and by brushing it aside, because that creates a vacuum for people that we don't want to make policy to get elected and make policy. Mm-hmm. I mean, and if you look at the issues that our generation has faced, we entered the workforce during a Great Recession. We ended our school careers, most of us, our high school careers with 9/11. We are the school shooting generation. Mm-hmm. We've had so many issues that directly tie to government policy affect our lives in such a short amount of time that there's no avoiding it. And I think the fact that we are the first generation to really kind of bring out the political talk. So our generation has really been the first to bring to light a lot of these political issues and really be vocal about it in a way that others haven't, because of the access to social media and the realization that we need to be upfront about these issues or things are going to continue to get worse.
Yes, yes. I mean, so much has happened. You mentioned 9/11, you know, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. There's just so many things that have happened. So from what I'm hearing, those incidents basically forced the younger generation to really take an interest and to be more engaged in politics, because obviously this is one of the ways I think you see how, you know, the people we have in power, how they impact our lives, you know. Here we're having shootings, they're talking about open carry gun. I mean, there's just so much to be done. It's just, but anyhow. So let's say if you were to name the top 3 issues that we need to work on to ensure we move our country with an agenda that really positively affect the young, what would they be?
I'd say top three issues, the environment, first and foremost. Nothing else is going to happen if we have a dead planet. I think that's a very simple one to say, but it encompasses everything. If we don't work to start stopping and reversing climate change, nothing else is going to matter. Money will not fix a dead planet. I would say in terms of gun safety, that's a huge one. Like you said, the Florida legislature is looking at having open carry. This is an epidemic of gun violence in our country right now. We're up to, I believe it's over 600 mass shootings this year in the United States. Gun violence is the #1 killer of children in our country. Again, that's something that no amount of money can fix. No amount of money can bring back a life. And this is a very easy problem to solve if we can actually focus on the real issues of background checks and red flag laws, and just making sure that people that are going to be a danger to themselves and others don't have access to firearms.
Right.
And I'd say the third issue is just everything economic. Just to put it very broadly, I mean, we talked about student loan debt. That's a huge one. I know that's one that's personally affected my family. Our ability to buy a house was completely wrapped around student loan debt and our access to be able to get financing. And that alone, it's not going to solve every problem, but the amount of economic impact, if we were to cancel student loan debt in its entirety, would be huge for our country. And then on top of that, issues with affordable housing, the insurance crisis in Florida, all of these economic issues are very much tied into my generation. And because we're in this stage of life where we should be buying houses, moving out of apartments, not renting, that we should be investing our money. And so many of us are living paycheck to paycheck that we can't do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just reading an article the other day, and they're saying that quite often the millennials, they forego getting married, they forego having children, they forego buying homes because of the huge student debts. And although they're making decent money, it's just not enough so it seems like with the baby boomers, we were pretty much, I would say, economically upward mobile. And with the millennials, really, it seems to be going backwards. So definitely something has to be done. And you've mentioned, I think when you and I were talking, you mentioned a SWOT analysis, the strength, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So if we look at our political system right now, just briefly give me a brief SWOT. What do you see as our strength, our weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And again, what are the threats?
So that's a lot to encompass in a short amount of time. I would say the strengths of the Democratic Party are that we are the party of the people, and we need to remember that we focus our policy and our decision making on what is best for people. We focus on human beings. We focus on what is going to make life the best for the most amount of people, and we need to remember that as a strength when we're going out and trying to get voters. I'd say a weakness is that we try so hard to appeal to so many people that we end up appealing to no one. We try to convert or appeal to Republican voters, or we try to run to the center because that's where we believe nonpartisan voters are, non-party affiliated voters are, or that we think that everyone will like us if we're in the middle. But that actually just means that we don't do anything that anybody likes. And when you try to blend into the background to not be controversial or to take sides, you actually become invisible. And that's a weakness that we have, that we do a lot of great things, like you talked about with the infrastructure bill. Those are fantastic. They're also not very sexy topics, and it's not like to pick them up. And so we need to make sure that we're more visible and we're more I don't want to say aggressive, but we need to really tout our successes and show how they're affecting people in a positive way and how they're changing lives.
We need to assert ourselves.
There's the word.
Assert ourselves and really let people know what is being done for the people. So got that. Opportunities.
And I'd say that is our opportunity to make sure that we are going out and being in the community. I'd say the biggest thing that came out of the SWOT analysis we did for the Broward Young Democrats is that everything had the common thread of we need to be out in the community more. We need to talk to people more. We need to be engaged on issues more. We need to go and find those boots on the ground that are already doing the work and align ourselves with them, not just try to go in and do something ourselves. If we say that we are for reproductive rights, we don't need to go out and do our own thing. We need to find those organizations that have been fighting for abortion access and have been fighting for reproductive justice for years and say, what can we do to help? Where can we help elevate your message? Where can we put people to get the advocacy done that you are already doing? And so that's really the opportunity we have, is to go out in the community and go be the help for people, not trying to do it all ourselves. And then I'd say the biggest threat is that we don't recognize that people have more than two options for voting. It's not you vote red or you vote blue. There is always the option to not vote. And that's what we saw in Florida in 2022. That's what we saw in Broward County with a 47% voter turnout. And I like to focus on Broward County a lot because we've proven that we have the ability to sway elections, not just in Florida, but nationwide. If you go back to 2016, and I always go back to this statistic, it's my favorite and my least favorite at the same time, and it's becoming dated now, but in 2016, we look at the presidential election. We had, Trump won that election by less than 115,000 votes in Florida, which was one of the states that brought him that win. In Broward County alone, we had 150,000 Democrats, registered Democrats, that did not vote. If we had brought out just that margin, that less than 115,000 vote margin, we could have flipped the election for Trump in the state and therefore in the country, and we would have had President Clinton. So I look at that as our biggest opportunity and our biggest threat at the same time is turnout.
And it's I like what you've said, Nancy. We have a tendency, we wait the election year to really be out in the community. It really should be like a way of life for us as a party. Whether there is an election coming or not, we should always be in the community and like you said, work with other allies where we don't have to be, we can complement what they are doing or support what they are doing. So we definitely have to get ready for 2024, and it starts right now. Let's not wait till next year. Let's not wait and because it has to be done. I see the glass half full. I think we can do it. We just have to work harder and smarter.
Absolutely.
I'd like to give you an opportunity to really kind of share with us 3 main points you would like to make to engage and motivate young voters.
I would say this is our time to take over. If you want to say, we have the ability. We are the largest voting bloc now. If you combine the power of the millennial vote and now the Gen Z vote, and as active as millennials are, Gen Z is even umpteen times more active and participatory. And the young folks that I've been working with, the ones that are young to me, I mean, I've been working with some phenomenal high school students that they're not even eligible to vote yet. And the type of active participation and responsibility they feel towards getting the right people elected and being engaged in democracy is mind-blowing. And I think if we harness our power, that we can make so much positive change. We have, for the Broward Young Democrats, we've been selling shirts this year that say voting is your superpower. And we had a whole superhero theme to it. And it really is true, though, that the ability to vote is still the best way to make change in your community, in your state, and in your country. And we need to make sure that we're utilizing that to the best of our ability, because if we come out and vote, they can't do anything about it if we're voting. And so that's the biggest part of it. And we also just need to think about, I mean, millennials, we are of the age to be parents. I'm a mother to a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. And most of my millennial counterparts I know have kids as well. And we need to make sure that we are protecting our communities and our planet for our kids too. That's, I believe, our responsibility as parents, is to make sure that we are not leaving the world in a worse place for our kids than we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say also make friends. Getting out and participating, canvassing, going out to early voting sites. I have made so many friends, had so many wonderful conversations with people. It's a great way to just get out and be active in your community. While I do say the Democratic Party needs to be out in the community more, I think also you getting out as an individual and being involved in the party more, you can create so many friendships and so many great relationships with people. And I know people that met through politics and got married even. So there's a dating pool. But I have really grown as a person since being involved in politics. I started out really in 2014 is when I got my start. I was never really engaged in politics before that. I come from the arts world. I have 2 degrees in music. And in 2014, I just happened to get involved with a school board race because where I was living at the time, I wasn't happy with a lot of policies. And I found a school board candidate I liked. I couldn't vote for him because I didn't live in his district, but he would have been a school board member for my school district. So I said, I'm going to go and volunteer for him. And what I learned on that one campaign alone, just as a volunteer, I took with me and then got further engaged, met all sorts of new people, learned so much. And it's just a great place to be involved. And I know politics gets a bad rap. It's really been such a great, phenomenal field to meet people and to really just try to make a difference.
Super. Well, I know you do an amazing job, Nancy. So I want to personally thank you for that. And our interview certainly has been enlightening. So thank you so much for joining us. And I am going to keep following you, see how engaged we can get the rest of the community, and we'll collaborate and do many things. But most importantly, you are doing an amazing job. Thank you so much and keep it up.
Thank you so much, Cattell. Thank you for having me tonight.
Super. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. The millennial generation is a demographic bridge to America's diverse future. They are credited for higher approval of legalization of marijuana, same-sex marriage, social justice, and many, many more issues. While baby boomers may feel uncomfortable with the shifts that we are seeing in our demographics, we definitely need to work with the millennial to ensure that some of the key social issues are really being addressed. I must say millennials have been more likely to identify as Democrats rather than Republican, and many of them actually are NPAs. They really do not relate to the Democratic Party, nor the Republican Party, and it's not a bad thing. So with that, we can certainly learn from our younger generation, particularly as it relates to the way they reach voters in the most untraditional ways. So I believe that they are our future and we must support them to really help them chart the way to a better America. So with that said, I want to encourage all of you to be engaged in your community. It does not have to be an election year. However you can help. It could be a high school student. Just mentor them into the political process. Just make sure they understand their role and their civic responsibilities, because we all can really make it a better system. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being with us this evening. And until next time, have a wonderful Saturday night. Good night.